And welcome to Now This Is Podcasting, the fan podcast where we talk about all the Star Wars movies in terms of RPGs. You know, Rob, too often people watch Star Wars and other cool sci-fi and fantasy movies, and they think of them as movies with stories and stuff like that. But we know the truth here. We know that every movie should be analyzed in terms of player stats and abilities. And if they don't conform to what we think those stats and abilities should be, then, well, we criticize that movie.
That's exactly right. And that's why Batman is the perfect superhero and also the perfect movie. Because no matter what you say about Batman's stats and abilities, you're right. Is he a paladin? Probably. Is he a rogue? Maybe. That's probably true too. Is he a bard? Sure. I think so. That works. All of these things work perfectly for Batman, and that's why nobody can ever argue about what his stats are, because they're always right.
Well, I think Batman is chaotic neutral, but this guy says Batman is lawful good. Oh no!
And again, they're wrong, because Batman is all of those things. Batman is both lawful good and chaotic evil at any time that he chooses.
Now, it's almost like you're suggesting that concepts that work for Dungeons and Dragons, like alignment and classes, don't translate to the narrative of cinema. But looking at the new preview for Solo, a Star Wars story, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Han Solo is a 5th level rogue.
Sounds good to me. I've got no argument there.
But I do have some arguments with the new force powers that Luke Skywalker, a 12th level Jedi Guardian, uses in the film Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Episode 8. He uses force projection, which is clearly a Star Wars Jedi counselor class power.
Matt is entirely right. Not only is that outside of his class abilities, but it's not in any way canonical. And I have written a letter to George Lucas saying as such.
I didn't write a letter because I can't read, but I stood up in the middle of the theater and pissed my pants.
This actually reminds me of something funny that did happen in my showing of The Last Jedi. It was during the scene, spoilers, by the way, clap your ears, I guess, if for some reason
you haven't seen the last...
Fuck you. Anyway, it was the scene where one of the scenes where Rey and Kylo are linked together, and it's the one where he's shirtless, and it was like the theater was entirely silent, right? It's like a real tense scene, and Kylo Ren comes on in his, like, you know, I don't know, high-waisted pants, all like pale and sweaty, and this girl just goes, "Ew!" super loud. Ew! It was the perfect moment. Anyway, we are not here to talk about Star Wars, believe it or not. Well, we are, but also we're not. That's not the only thing we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Hello, I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt. We're here to tell you stop trying to turn movies into role-playing games in your head. It's not a healthy thing. Don't do it.
You can enjoy movies, and you can even try to graft Dungeons and Dragons concepts onto them, but definitely don't be a jerk about it, and also don't try too hard to make, you know, to try to make sense of whether or not Luke Skywalker is a fighter or Lando is a bard. Lando is a bard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this goes back to, like, people have been arguing about this dumb shit since, like, the 1980s. There's that classic response in Dragon magazine that someone wrote of that Gandalf of Lord of the Gandalf fame is only a 5th level wizard. And, you know, because people are always like, he's a 20th level deity. But it doesn't fucking matter. And though actually he is only 5th level.
He is only 5th level.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll.
But anyway, we actually have some news to talk about. If you're on the Dungeons and Dragons circuit and you're paying attention to all the hullabaloo and the exciting news that comes down the wire, you've probably heard that Matt Colville has just launched a Dungeons and Dragons Kickstarter, which is funded now, I think, at $1
Beep, beep, beep,
million.
beep, 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 beep. Just in from the wire.
Give us
Matt
the ticker.
Colville's Kickstarter, Strongholds and Streaming, steams to the front of the Kickstarter charts with over $1 million pledged.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild that there's this much money pouring into what is, at its base, the only thing that's being delivered is a supplement. And a neat supplement, Strongholds and...
Followers.
Strongholds and Followers, which is neat. But the idea that you can kickstart something like that for $1 million is absolutely... it's wild and impressive and very exciting. The second part of it, which is why I think it's so popular, is that this is going to fund Colville's, I guess, I'm not sure exactly what the money is going to. Film equipment, space, I don't know.
Studio.
To stream his... Studio. Oh, that's what it is. To stream his game, which I'm excited to see. He's a very talented dungeon master, and I'm kind of curious about the people that he plays with.
Right. I think Colville is adding something that most streamers don't have, which is he's like throwing at everyone all of his fucking like scribbles and notes and stuff like that on how he designed and run his campaign, which that's like, oh, that's a cool backdoor peek at things behind the dungeon master screen. So props to him for doing that. Expanding streaming.
I think it's going to be very, very interesting. So this is cool for a number of reasons. And Matt and I talk about this briefly, or we talked about it briefly on the last podcast. And we don't want to go in, we don't need to go too much into whether or not, Matt Colville could be doing something else. But it does, what it really demonstrates, and Colville said this himself in the stream last week, that it really demonstrates how important it is to build your own audience. Which is good and bad. So I'm of two minds about this, right?
Right.
So it's good that if you have an audience and you have fans and you have that reach, then you don't need to go through a traditional publisher. And you don't need to, address the gatekeepers of the industry. You can go right to the people and kickstart your own wacky adventure and make a ton of money doing it. The downside is, of course, that now every content creator has to, you can't just be a writer or a game designer anymore. You have to be a streamer or a podcaster or something like that.
You can't just get a fucking job somewhere anymore. You have to fucking be the writer and the boss, which not everyone should have to do.
Yeah, some people like the hustle. And I respect the hustle, but not everybody has the personality or the resources or the enthusiasm to not just be a DM and a game designer, but also a Twitch streamer and a podcaster and all that.
Right, and I mean the people who can really do this successfully, right? Matt Colville. I'm thinking of also Monty Cook, who has this cult of personality,
right. Numenaria,
rightly deserved as a game designer. That whatever new project he works on, it's going to make bank, whether it's good or not, right? Most of his stuff has been good, but,
And that's exactly right. So, and this is not unique to Dungeons and Dragons and game. In fact, it's not unique at all, but it's interesting that it now applies to Dungeons and Dragons. This is something that you've been able to do with, movies and music and whatever forever, but now it's kind of cool that you can get enough of a following doing game design or Twitch streaming your home game to get that level of popularity to be able to launch your own project or game or something like that. So it's cool. It's a little concerning that this is what it's required to be successful in the industry, but it is what it is.
I'm excited that this is already going to be a success, and it's richly deserved by Matt Colville. I think he and I come from very different perspectives with game design. Like, he starts off his spiel for this Kickstarter being like, Dungeons and Dragons isn't just about slaying monsters. And I'm like, well, none of my games I've ever run or ever played in have ever just been about that. So I get where you're coming from, but for most of us, or at least what I think is most of us, we're already past that.
He does come from an old school perspective, to be sure, and he's transcended it, and I don't think that he's a grognard in any serious way, but he does definitely skew in towards that part of older editions that was largely, this is a game about slaying monsters. And so for him, it's it may seem interesting or revolutionary to say it's not just a game about slaying monsters, but I do agree that that's a little bit behind where the rest of the community is at this point.
Yeah. Well, congrats on Mr. Millionaire Matt Colville.
Millionaire Matt Colville. One thing that's exciting about this, and I'm excited and I'm interested to see where it goes, is that hopefully this opens up, the floodgates for more kickstarted products, possibly not just supplements for 5th edition, but entirely new games or, modules that go in interesting directions, things that are possibly too off the wall for Wizards to do themselves, but could potentially be very interesting and exciting if done by the right people.
Well, there's a downside to this. I've recently weaned myself off of kickstarting things, but like I kickstarted,
right.
I think Pugmire, a Dungeons and Dogs style game where all the players are
Pugmire
good
is
boys.
awesome. Are you not a fan? Are you not a fan of Pugmire?
No, I'm a fan of the entire idea that we just said. You're Dungeons and Dragons players, but you're good boy dogs keeping a loyal kingdom until the return of man. I gave them my $20. I got the book. It was completely filled with stats for a bunch of different dog species, new classes that were badly designed, and hardly anything on like creating a fun world for intelligent walking dogs to explore, or for, like creating this campaign where you're like, oh, you're dogs, you're fighting cats or something like that. There's hardly any of that. So, I mean, all the good things in Pugmire were given away in the spiel, and you should just take those and run with them.
Take the idea. That's too bad. I've only seen the art. And
I bought the
love
book,
the art.
So
well, now I know better. I guess that's good to know, because I have been considering picking it up, but now I know that I can just maybe do it myself.
I mean, Kickstarter and D&D have had some really bad failures. I mean, we've all, I think, mostly forgotten about Paizo's epic bacon fail of a massively multiplayer online RPG.
I had memory hold that so hard.
Yep.
I had totally forgotten about that.
I mean, I'm glad it didn't destroy their company, but it seems like it threw things off for a really long time. It was
I
it was really terrible. I kickstarted it only to get the mega dungeon they sold with it. But it was pretty bad. Stop trying to make MMOs game companies. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it anymore unless you have literally bottomless pockets.
Right.
Listeners, do not kickstart anything unless you are absolutely totally okay with losing that money entirely, or you are purely convinced of the unerring success of that Kickstarter, because there are a lot of failures.
You could go the other direction, right? Matt Colville's is like, the book is done, everything you're doing is just art, like the chance of this failing is pretty low, but like there's some other games that, and so like you can get in on the thing for $20, but you go to the other end, like Monty Cook's last Kickstarter, which was Invisible Sun, has some interesting ideas. You can't get in on that for like less than $100, which is for it's like you can buy a video game system for that much.
Right. So just choose wisely is what we're saying. In the board game and tabletop role-playing market on Kickstarter, there have been some pretty spectacular failures. Not as many, I think, as in like the tech sector of Kickstarter. There have been some really spectacular, totally over the moon
the
concepts
ultimate
that people
3D watch one.
Yes, yeah. So maybe nothing that bad, but there have been I think there's probably, I'd be interested to see the stats, but probably a high ratio of failure for board games and tabletop role-playing games. Let's move on. I want to talk briefly, Matt, about the new Unearthed Arcana that the Wizards of the Coast has released. It is called Into the Wild, and it's about travel. And
I saw this one. It's got that guy. He goes to Alaska. He kills moose.
Right.
Feels really bad about it.
It's actually a really, really sort of avant-garde one-shot where
society, man.
you and one player, try to live as long as you can and write in a journal and leave, something behind that Jack Kerouac. Well, no, sorry, not Jack Kerouac. Who is it? Who published that? Anyway. Krakauer. Anyway, back to what we were talking about.
The Mormon guy.
The Mormon guy. Anyway, what it's actually about.
Yeah.
It's not about dying of diarrhea in the Alaskan wilderness. It's actually about locations. It's about travel and the wilds, and it's got some interesting charts and a sample region called the Moon Hills. Matt, what did you think of this?
I mean, I could take this or leave it. I don't feel like I really need these extra rules for my game. I just don't care about any of this stuff.
No, that's totally fine. I feel mostly the same way. I think it's interesting. I feel like it adds maybe complexity that's not necessary. I think it would be neat if you were in, let's say, like a hex crawl, a kingmaker, a village of Hamlet type thing, and you had very carefully mapped out all of your topographical regions with all of these rules. I think that would be very interesting. Is it something that I think is necessary or would be anywhere near the top of my list? No. The one thing I did think was kind of cool was the planar confluence chart. I think that's sort of neat. I liked the idea of, that's something that I don't always think about. And running games that often have planar influences, I think it's a cool thing to remind DMs to consider. But
right,
generally,
that's a great thing for an Eberron campaign where ideas of planes sort of intersecting and interacting are really close. And I don't know if you noticed, but they try to pull a fast one here on us by bringing back the default points of light campaign setting that I think most good GMs fucking hated from 4th edition. So this is return of 4th edition's non-campaign setting.
I did not catch that. Good eye, Matt. That is very clever of them. And also rude. How dare they? I also liked this tactical terrain chart. That's sort of neat. But again, also... I kind of like that, actually. That's sort of fun. I just don't do that. The thing is, I don't do that many random encounters. And unless I was doing something like Kingmaker, where it makes sense for there to be a bunch of random encounters, I don't know that I would be rolling on a chart for tactical terrain. So I guess it depends on your playstyle. But it is, I actually do like it when Wizards does these interesting alternative rules, because even if you don't use them, they're great ways to start thinking about game design, and you can pick and choose bits to put into your own game. So I would actually sort of rather have that than they, continue to expand their list of classes and subclasses. At least, they can continue to do that. Just do it more slowly than perhaps, for example, Pathfinder did it, so that we don't get weird class interactions or power creep or bloat or anything like that. So I'm for this. It's not super interesting, but there's stuff here if you're thinking about terrain.
I'm guessing, I would have guessed, but I think it's already done. We talked about the next release from Wizards of the Coast is going to be Mordenkainen's Tone of Foes, and it's going to have an emphasis on the planes, old school manual of the planes kind of stuff. I would have guessed this is a trial balloon to see how the rules might work in exotic locations, you're stuck on the plane of negative energy, or you're in Mechanus or Acheron or Limbo. But it seems like Wizards is mostly done with that book, so I don't think that this is for that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which it's so interesting that they're trying to pitch this as not, it's not Monster Manual 2, but it very clearly is Monster Manual 2, so I don't know. I guess it's just sort of a naming convention, but it seems weird to, be coy about the fact that it's just a Monster Manual 2. It's cool that they're naming it something different and giving it a different flavor, which they should do. But I don't know why they're pretending that's not what it is. I guess we'll have to see what's in it. That being said, maybe they do have a bunch of interesting rules or things that would differentiate it from a new Monster Manual. Right.
I mean, and this is my ultimate hope for this, is that not only it includes a good number of monsters, but there's also a chapter on the city of Greyhawk. So players who want to play in that can play there because Mordenkainen's from Greyhawk. And then there's a chapter on Sigil and each of the outer planes. If that's not in there, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
That would be great. And I liked what you said earlier about, this is how, different things will behave in different planes, rules for combat or travel or interactions when you're in Acheron, when you're in Mechanus.
It's a mystery to me. We have agreed with which we have agreed. And you think you have to want more than you need. Until you have it all, you won't be free. Society, you're crazy breed.
But let's get to the main event, Matt. Are you ready?
I think so. What's the main event?
The main event is more Unwanted Advice. This time, I have selected a number of questions for Matt.
The tables, and they are turned.
And he has not heard them, and he and I are going to answer your questions.
We will save your game from yourself.
Most of which you did not want answered on a podcast, maybe. But it's too late now. I found them on the internet. All right, so here's number one. And this one's a doozy, so buckle up, listeners, and we'll see what we get out of this. All right, so here we go. I have dyscalculia. That's right, it's dyscalculia. It's like dyslexia, but with numbers and math. And it's the main reason I've avoided playing IRL/offline games for years. It's no problem when I play on Roll20, obviously. If someone like myself were at your table and had to use a calculator or have someone else do their math, will you turn them away or resent them?
Yeah, I'd throw them in a back alley, spit on them, and say, "We don't want no dyscalculias in this part of town." I mean, obviously not. All are welcome at the D&D table. No, that's an interesting problem. I would say that's great. Whatever play aids you need to make this game fun for you should be there and at your fingertips. Everyone gets math wrong, and if you get math wrong more often than other people, fucking load yourself up with all the apps. I would make one of my players their own Roll20 campaign that they could pull up on their iPad so they can just press the buttons on there and see the rolls there. Problem solved.
Yeah, this is a question of accessibility, and in this case, it's super easy to make the game accessible to somebody who's got dyscalculia. A calculator or a dice rolling app or any sort of thing. And I have had players without any sort of learning disability or anything who could not do math to save their lives. And yes, it slowed down the game a little bit, but there's no way I would have kicked them out of the table just because, they weren't able to add their bonuses together quickly enough. I totally understand this person's reticence and concern about how they'd be seen at the table or how it might affect the game. But take it from two experienced DMs that I am having trouble imagining that anybody would turn you away.
Right, if anyone turns you away, they're a piece of shit, and you didn't want to play with them anyway.
Yeah, that's a really very bad person, and I can't imagine anyone doing that.
Which, I hate to say this, but I feel like, based on the writer's question, that has happened before. Otherwise, why would they be asking?
Yeah, I have to wonder if maybe they had a bad experience, which is why they haven't. So that would be very unfortunate. And I've named this person Dread Vampire Dyscalculia because that's how it sounded. But yes, Dyscalculia, you should not feel bad about needing a calculator. Anybody who gives you a hard time for that is a jerk and not somebody you want to play with. And this is an easy accommodation to make for any table and any dungeon master. So don't you worry about it. You should be absolutely welcome at any table, anytime.
Hell yeah. Go forth and digitally roll in peace.
That one was an easy one, a softball one, but I wanted to get that.
Just seeing how woke I was.
Yeah.
The woke test.
We don't turn anybody away. But we would definitely not turn you away for that. That's not true. No, that's not true. I don't really turn anybody away. I'm sure there are players out there I would, but so far,
if you're like, I've had a lot of experience on the 4chan role playing game channel. I'd be like, all right, move along. We don't need.
Yeah, the only disability that we would turn you away for is being an asshole. Yeah. So don't be an asshole, and you're fine. All right, second question. I had a game a few nights ago where I was playing a bard for the hell of it. I don't know what that means, but that's the question. I had gotten Tasha's Hideous Laughter as a spell, which requires the target to make a wisdom saving throw or be incapacitated, i.e. rolling on the floor laughing. My DM stated that he thought it was overpowered. Fine, it probably was. By the way, it's not. But it had a fairly doable saving throw of 14. In a fight, our fighter was wailing on this big guy, but is taking big hits, so I decide to step in. I cast Tasha's and tell him that he needs to roll a wisdom saving throw of 14 or higher. He succeeds. No big deal. Next turn, same thing. I bonus action heal my fighter friend and Tasha's again. Succeeds. This happens 2 more times until the fighter finally finishes him. I politely asked my DM if he could roll his saving throws outside the screen, to which I was met with a nice yelling fit where he berated me for being a bad PC and, quote, not trusting him. I'm past the raised voices. All I want to know is, was my request reasonable? If it wasn't, I want to apologize. I'm calling this person Dice Distruster.
Ooh. Let's do some math here. Was it, there was 3 saves at a 14 or higher. Carry the 4. There is a basically, okay, so you're right to distrust this DM's dice, but on the one hand, you have to realize it's a pretty, not unusual occurrence for a GM to make 3 saving throws of a 14 or higher. In fact, I believe it's the chances of this big bad failing your save for Tasha's Hideous Laughter on the first one is 7 out of 20, right? So that's 35% of the time it's going to make it save. If it made it save,
this assumes. I'm sorry, Matt. We'll go with your math, but this also assumes that the monster doesn't have any wisdom.
Right.
This is just assuming it's a flat 0 roll.
Straight 0 chance. If it has a +0 to wisdom, which it seems like you're saying, well, I don't think that's unusual because it was a creature that fails it. If it made it twice, that's a 1, basically a little more than 1 out of 10. If it made it 3 times, that's like a 1 out of 20. That's like rolling a natural 20, which, if you've sat around the table, happens plenty of time. If it has a mere +3 bonus, then this creature would make it say, that's going to, it's going to be much less unusual for it. So this is not out of the realm of possibilities at all for this creature to make it save 3 times. Now, we should probably take a step back here from all of this math.
No, I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we established that it's not outside of the realm of possibility for this to happen. Because that's important, because when the dice are against you, it can feel like it's absolutely impossible. But this is totally something that can happen. But yes, let's take a step back.
Right. As a GM, there is something about Tasha's Hideous Laughter that feels a little out of sync with some of the other magic in the game. So I can sympathize with your GM's feeling, and I feel like I'm going to say with 90% certainty that your GM has run the game in older editions, where Tasha's Hideous Laughter was, I think, much more debilitating than it is in 5th edition, where I'm pretty sure Incapacitated is not exactly terrible and you probably get a save every round. Tasha's Hideous Laughter was one of those spells that, like, if players used it on me as a DM, I would be likely to whip it out on them, and then they would feel bad that the spell existed. So I get your GM's or Dungeon Master's hesitance about respecting the spell, because one, it's mechanically in older editions different. In this new one, it's not. It's not overpowered. But it's thematically a little bit different than other magic. So maybe your GM feels like it messes with the tone of his campaign.
I don't think that so let's talk about this. My position is that if it's in the player's handbook, unless I explicitly say ahead of time
before the campaign even begins.
Yeah, exactly. In session 0, if I say, look, these spells are disallowed. Unless I say that, I don't feel like it's justified to tell my players, no, you can't cast that spell. Sometimes I will get annoyed. I absolutely admit it. One of my big bads got polymorphed last week. It was very frustrating, but it was totally within the realm of possibility. It was something that was all above board, and I rolled with it, and the combat ended up being just fine. So I get your DM's frustration, but I don't think it's justified for them to say, this is overpowered, especially if you didn't talk about it ahead of time. So you're right about that.
Now on to, can you ask your DM whether they should make all their rolls on the table because you don't trust them? That's an interesting conundrum.
That's the interesting question here, I think.
This wouldn't come up with me because I make all my rolls, except for ones that players don't know are happening, right? All the rolls, all the saves for the monsters out on the table, and all their attack rolls as well.
And I do this the same way. I roll out on the table unless it's something like I have to roll 10d6s and I do it on an app instead because I don't want to find... Well, it's more like 10d8s because I don't have 10d8s.
Or you're making a stealth check for a thing that the players don't know is there or something like that.
Right. But all in combat attack rolls and saving throws I make out in the open. However, I do not think that is a requirement of being a DM. And I don't think that it is necessarily the sign of a bad DM if they make their rolls behind the screen. What do you think, Matt?
Well, it adds a certain level of tension, plus giving the DM ability to fudge the dice. Because what you're telling the person who put time and effort into writing this game is that, I think you're fudging the dice, and I think you're specifically picking on me. You gotta be, that's a difficult conversation to have. And if you have other evidence that you feel like you're losing all the time, well, I think the best course, if you feel raw about this, is to say, I like the style of play where everyone makes rolls where they can see them, including the DM. That way I know that when we fucked up, you're not pulling any punches and we succeed, we know we're succeeding.
I agree with that as well. I like it. I like it better that way. And I did not, but however, sorry, I should say I have not always done it that way. In the past, I have played games where I rolled behind a screen or on the Roll20 app I would roll secretly, and I still do that sometimes. And it depends on the type of game you're playing, and I don't think it's wrong for a DM to want additional control over their dice or to fudge dice. And that's the thing. You can, if you feel like your DM is picking on you, that's one thing, but if your DM fudges dice, I don't think that's a bad style of play. I don't think that if they're trying to create narrative tension or to sort of rough round the sharp edges off of a combat, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just an entirely different style of play. And if that's a problem that you have, you should talk about it with your DM. Right. But that in and of itself, I don't think is bad. So I don't think, me personally, Matt, I don't think that it is correct or within the bounds of reason to ask your DM to roll out in the open if they have a good reason for not doing it. That being said, it doesn't sound like the DM handled this particularly gracefully, and I don't know that you owe them an apology.
Yeah, I would say that, you could, a lower conflict route to this problem is to, for example, suggest a different type of resolution to spells. Spells are a little weird in Dungeons & Dragons, where when you do any other action in the game, you make the roll. With spells, the monsters make a saving throw. You could always request the very simple and mathematical equivalent of we get to make a spell roll instead of monsters making a saving throw roll. So that's one more lower conflict route to resolve this. Another even better one, your DM, possibly for thematic reasons, says he hates this particular spell. Fucking ask him if you can switch it out for sleep. It's not exactly the same effect, but you get to make the rolls there. Or pick some other spell that does some debilitation on a creature. Pick a different spell.
And
it's not ideal, but
they're
then you don't butt heads.
Not ideal, but if you want to keep having fun and you want to stay on your DM's good side and avoid conflict, then just adjust the way that you play. And this is something that is probably going to happen to a lot of you at some point. I don't know that the DM is being entirely fair, and I can't say without being there whether or not they fudged the dice or if they really did just roll that many saving throws. But just the simplest thing to do would be to just pick a different spell and avoid this conflict in the future.
Yeah.
I have asked my players to take different abilities when they were, not because I thought they were overpowered, but because they were slowing the game down or because they were too complicated. And that has always gone fine. So have that conversation with your DM. Again, sounds like they yelled at you. Shouldn't have yelled at you. So I don't think you owe them an apology.
No apologies.
Just have a frank. No, you don't have to apologize.
I mean, that's a rule you can say generally, is never apologize. No, I think one thing you can say generally, though, is you got to remember that Dungeons & Dragons is not a set game, and that every dungeon master is going to run a different type of game. And so if you have a dungeon master that's very rules light and thematic, certain spells or abilities that, that's just cool for the narrative, it works. A build for that game will work much less differently than a dungeon master who plays every spell by exactly how it's written on the page, right?
And also, it's not a competition. You're not in conflict with your DM. Remember, you guys are playing the game together, and it sounds like you're seeing this as an adversarial relationship. And don't think of it as that way. Your DM wants to have fun. You want to have fun. What you need to be thinking about is how do we get to the point where everybody is having fun again? So don't apologize, but do have a conversation. I would get it if maybe you feel like you need to be able to see the rolls, but if that is what you need and your DM doesn't want to do it, then I think maybe you should consider just picking a different spell.
I'm a big fan of any of our low conflict options for this resolution.
Just maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but the best thing to do is just, try to smooth things over. You're the adult in the room. Do whatever it takes to keep everybody happy. It's a game and everybody's having fun.
And keep in mind that as a bard, you're basically the best class in the game, even without Tasha's hideous laughter.
Exactly. That's the thing. There's so many... Well, I didn't want to bring this up, but there's so many other things you can do besides Tasha's hideous laughter. Why would you cast that 4 times? Wait, hang on.
Did they say 4 or 3? Because that changes the math a lot.
Well, I think it's 3, you're right. But either way, CL of 4 is a first level spell... I'm wondering if maybe they didn't cast it too many times. Okay, well, never mind. We'll move on. It doesn't matter. Don't cast it 3 times in a row. Do something else. If it doesn't work twice, do something different.
Right.
Even if you can cast it.
The other thing you didn't think about is, like, as a DM, as that, in that, like, for example, elves are immune to the sleep spell. I might have certain creatures immune to laughter.
Yeah.
Like a blue meanie. They just can't laugh.
That doesn't sound like that's what happened. But just be aware. Yeah, here's a general bit of advice. If you cast a spell twice and you get no result, then cast something different your third time. Just that's also a general good rule for life. If you keep trying something and it keeps failing miserably, maybe try something different. Just here's some good life advice for you. 12 rules for life from Dungeon Masters.
Dungeon Master Jordan Peterson?
Clean your room. Don't cast Tasha's hideous laughter 3 times.
Sit up straight at the table.
You're a lobster. All right, on to question 3.
Fuck you, Jordan Peterson. All right, question 3.
Okay, so here we go. I DM for my friends online each week, and to be frank, I hate it. I DM on occasion in store, and I actually enjoy that. But when I'm running it online, I get extremely tired and fed up, and I can only deal with it for a couple of hours at most. So we only do 2-hour sessions and barely get anything done. I know they want to do more, but I just don't have it in me. And none of them are up for running a proper thing. One of them will do one-shots periodically, which helps give me a break. Also, I'll cover this before the flowchart gets linked. I know that they hate it. I'm not sure what flowchart they're talking about. I think it's the flowchart of, are you having fun, or it all leads to Rule 0 or whatever. Anyway, I've already told them, which is why they agreed to lower it from 4 to 6 hours a week to 2, but it's not helping. Dissatisfied DM.
Okay, so dissatisfied DM is saying that he plays in store and loves it, and he plays online and hates it. And actually, I sympathize so much. When you're in person with people. Like there's something that no video chat cyber program will ever be able to pull back together, which is that when you're around other people, you feed off their energy, and when they're having fun, you're having fun, and you recognize cues, and running online is fucking tough. It's fucking training.
It is. I run a weekly game with Matt, and we have a good time, and it's with some very experienced role players, and it goes pretty well, but it is harder to keep everybody's energy up. It's harder to keep everybody entertained. If I were running it with a group that I did not know as well, or if I did not have such a good relationship with, it would probably be exhausting. I had to quit. Actually, this is true. I had to quit a Shadowrun game that I was running for the same group because it was just too much work. It was too tiring. Right. I was having too much trouble with that game. It works better with what I'm running now, but that's a totally reasonable thing to say.
We're going to do a whole episode on running online, but the fact of the matter is that no one can get away from is, well, one, you can play online with people you can't play normally because they don't live nearby you. But two, your prep time is expanded exponentially. And that three, it's just fucking hard to keep people's attention when they're just sitting and looking at a screen.
You can have, and I'm a big proponent of Roll20 and of digital play in general, and I think it can be very, very fun. And some tools are absolutely invaluable when it comes to running online. Some of the things you can do are totally impossible to do in person. That being said, depending on what type of person you are and what type of player you are, you may just enjoy an in-person game more, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong.
But it sounds like there's two issues here, Matt.
Right.
So there's the one issue, and so what I think Matt and I are both saying to you, Dissatisfied DM,
is you can quit.
Is you can quit. Maybe just run games in person. I know your friends are online, but if you're not having fun, just run games in the store or find a local group, put an ad on Craigslist.
Fucking play something low stress with your friends online. For example, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Get all in there. It's super easy. No one ever gets mad at each other in that. Just do something like that online.
Play a video game instead. Something like, 45 minutes like League of Legends or Dota 2.
Just a light game of Dota 2.
light game of a MOBA. Nobody will get mad or frustrated or rage. No, but you can quit. But also there's a second issue here, which it sounds like your friends want you to DM and they're not being cooperative with the fact that you can only run for 2 hours.
I have some tips for this. I hope you do too.
Sure. I do too.
Well, okay, I would say one of the best ways to keep the energy up in Roll20 is to fucking focus less on all of the shit that Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds has around it, all of the pretty pictures and buttons and stuff like that, and go simpler. Like get Google Hangouts or Discord or Skype and make sure and just sit down with everyone and say, hey, this game tires me out, and I feel like it's because we're not interacting in the same way as I do with players in person, and say, I'd like everyone to just, as much as you can, make the pledge that I'm not going to check a message board or Twitter or Google News or tab over to look at spells, but that when it's not my turn, I am going to be just looking at everyone's picture on the thing with my hands in my pockets so that I'm focused and that I'm paying attention to what's happened so that the dungeon master doesn't have to keep dragging people back.
Yes, that's the best way to do it. What it sounds like you really need to do is you need to talk to your players and say, look, this is why I'm tired. This is why Roll20 is exhausting to me. So if you guys want to run 4 to 6 hour games, then you have to put in the effort to make this easier for me, right? You have to be more engaged. You have to help me out with stats and numbers and be ready on rolls and be, willing to move when it's time to move. And
willing not to, sometimes you can't avoid this because of a deadline or something, not to be doing work email on the side or right. Browsing Imgur or whatever like that, which I will admit, when I played role games, and it's super easy to play online when you're the player because it's so easy to fuck around and be like, I would just be doing this anyway. But I get a DM playing for me.
Right. And I'm aware when more players are doing that when I'm playing Roll20. I just ask that they be as engaged as possible. And for my games, it works pretty well. But you may need to ask your players, look, I need more.
Need that huge level of commitment. It's fine to ask for it.
Exactly. If you're going to do all the work of being the DM, then you are totally in your right to say, look, if you guys want to run games, if you want me to be your DM, then I need more from you. That is a totally legitimate thing to ask, and I do wish that more DMs would do it. It sounds like we have a whole community of forever DMs whose players take them for granted, and I've had enough of it. I've had enough of it, Matt. So put your foot down and say, look, I like running games. I have more fun in person. I would like it if we could have a better community and rapport, and if you guys could be more engaged, so I don't get so exhausted.
Right. Find what it is about the in-player games that gives you energy and makes you not tired, and see if you can make your players give you that in Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. And if they can't, you just have to say, this doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. One of you guys can DM.
Look, I have had trouble abandoning games. It's so much fun. It sucks to be the DM and say, look, we can't play anymore. But you know what? You're putting in work. It's your game. You're doing extra efforts to make this happen. And if it's exhausting for you, then stop. Don't do it. Don't do it anymore. Definitely don't go until somebody, has a breakdown or there's, a big blowout or something.
Right.
So just,
Quit when you're starting to put words on paper that say, I hate this game. I hate running this game. You probably should have quit. It's
time for a break.
Okay. Do one more session to wrap it up and say, thanks for playing. We'll do something else next time.
I mean, yeah, if it were me, I would say, look, we're gonna take a month off. We're gonna take 2 months off. I'm gonna prepare a bunch of stuff, and then you guys are gonna come back and you're gonna do a better job of being engaged. And if that doesn't work, then we're done. We're gonna play. Somebody else can run a game, or we'll just play video games or something else, or I'll just run in person. So don't be afraid to make an ultimatum and say, look, I'm the DM and I'm exhausted and I need this from you. Okay, last question, Matt.
Ready.
And this is a special occasion for us here at Dungeon Master of None. This is a question that came to us in our email from one of you listeners. So thank you, David.
Last name withheld.
For writing to us. We are going to answer your question. We
say thank you, David, last name withheld.
David, last name I have redacted. So, David, I played a lot of D&D back in the late 80s. I'm getting back into it to teach my nephews, who are 6 and 8. But of course, they're brilliant and advanced superstars. But of course, nephews are the best.
All the children are above average in this D&D campaign.
That's right. We've enjoyed a few sessions, but I'm finding it challenging to design adventures that aren't just hack and slash, and to calibrate the threat level in a combat encounter. Any tips on helping kids to learn and grow as gamers and as people via D&D?
Oh, wow. Great question, David. This is something that everyone is curious about these days. We're going to do a whole episode on this in the future and have some of our friends on who've run longer campaigns for young kids. I've only done it a couple of times. But in talking with them, I would say a couple easy pieces of advice that you can go with, especially with the ages you said, 6 and 8?
6 and 8.
Right. Basically, you want to cut at least 60% of the game out. No different size dice, no character sheets that have more than 10 things on them. To make that where your kids can really just get in the groove of that basic relationship between a dungeon master and the players, where the players say they want to do something in their imaginations, especially for children, and the dungeon master tells them what the consequences is.
This is one of the places, well, I'm a big fan of these in general, but one of the places where something like the spell cards that Wizards of the Coast produces can be really handy. If you want to maybe just limit your players to, you're a wizard, here's a magic missile card, and here's a sleep card, and, these are the things that you can cast. And that makes it a little bit more, for lack of a better word, a little bit more video gamey and probably more accessible to a 6 and 8-year-old who understands that style of play. And then as they, become more accustomed to the system, you can provide them with, additional actions or additional things that they can do. But
it sounds like
Matt's right.
The second part of the question was talking about designing adventures that aren't just hack and slash. And here's where you may need to do a little bit of research to find a story that you think will engage your players. You probably shouldn't tell a tale of complicated trade disputes, taxation, and intergalactic politics. Instead, what are the figure out and ask them or your brother and sister or brother and sister-in-law what sort of stories they enjoy, and build from there, right? Kids really like stories that speak to them about coming of age, figuring out a complicated world of adults. So look for those kinds of stories.
So this may not be applicable, but to me, I think a really great model is The Hobbit, right? The Hobbit is a book full of exciting adventure and peril, but there's actually very little violence and combat in The Hobbit. But there's tons of things that you can use as model as encounters. Like there's a group of trolls in the woods and you have to sneak by them. Or there's a riddle, or riddles in the dark. Or you're throwing flaming pine cones at wolves. Also, this reminds me, if you're worried about the violence of it, you can always have the enemies be more like giant spiders or, non-humanoid, obviously monster things to avoid any uncomfortable, if you want to get away from violence entirely, you can do that too. But if it's, I'm sure kids can probably
you want
handle,
to twist his neck another quarter to the left. That'll knock him out more. Yeah, that'll knock him out even more.
Knock him out more.
Well, no. Here's a quick idea, top of the head, right? I get to see which questions from our email are going to go out here. So top of the head, they do hack and slash, right? That's what we said. You have a hack and slash dungeon, but your nephews and nieces were supposed to find an adult in there that was going to help them out. Maybe an older wizard or a stalwart knight, some sort of person that was supposed to be a mentor. However, they find a simple, very, very simple, there's no way they can miss it, clue that this person is gone, right? And that they have to find them. And then things are not as they should be in this fortress or dungeon or testing ground to see if they can join the Order of Knights or Order of Wizards or what have you. And they have to figure out, what happened to the kindly wizard mentor that was supposed to deal with it. Now we're on our own. He sent us in there. Now we have to find him.
And this is a great idea. And this is again, Matt and I are going to do a whole episode on this. We're going to bring on some of our friends who have done this more extensively. Matt and I have only done this a little bit, but I think that the general idea is much the same as how you design encounters for adults, and that is you think about the media that they enjoy. So find out what your nephews like. What shows are they into? What video games do they play? What books do they read? And then think about how you can model a campaign or a one-shot or an encounter that sort of mirrors what happens in that media.
And very clearly, don't expect them to try and have to take that proactive step of finding things, right? If you have them at hack and slash, take them to, they killed something and, you've killed the ogre. You find out he has, this magic jewel, and it says clearly on it, it belonged to this person, right? Your quest is now to find out who this jewel belonged to and what happened to them, right? It's okay to just tell them that's what you have to do now.
All right, that is it for Unwanted Advice. Any other thoughts before we sign off, Matt?
No, other than I would like to say that Princess Leia, clearly a 9th level diplomat and noble with only the Force user feat, should not been able to float back into the Class 2 Mon Calamari cruiser.
Dungeon Master of None, everybody.